ManUp Entrepreneurship Bootcamp.
Folks, up here we already have mentioned here Coach JC. He's back with us, as well as Lori Montag and Jonathan Barnett. Arthur Greeno over here, he is the owner of Chick-fil-A. I thought like 3 Chick-fil-A's, 8 Chick-fil-A's? What is it? 2 Chick-fil-A's, 2 Chick-fil-A's. It seems like a lot more than that. Blake Ewing over here, he's an entrepreneur and visionary, owner of numerous downtown businesses, including Joe Mama's Restaurant, Boomtown Teas, the Max Retro Pub, Back Alley Blues and Barbecue, and the Phoenix Cafe. Ewing 32 also founded the Engine Room, a communications company, and Black Gold Entertainment, a film production company, and is chairman of the Shop Tulsa initiative, encouraging Tulsans to buy locally. Everyone give it up for Blake Ewing. And because I missed my opportunity earlier, everyone get up for Arthur Greeno, ladies and gentlemen, providing you those Chick-fil-A coupons. And over there, where I couldn't see, of course, is the former mayor of Tulsa, ladies and gentlemen. Please give a huge hand for Kathy Taylor.
Now, Dan, I wanted to say one caveat for the incredible Miss Taylor here. She's one of the only people that I know who's worked in the public sector for 30 years, between her legal business and all the different things she's done. She's worked in the public, the private sector, nonprofit, and civic, right? So the big 4. So she's really, really old. She's 23, folks. She's 23. But she's one of the few people, I think, qualified to look at business from all 4 perspectives. So I think it's really a treat that you're here, too. Thank you so much for taking the time on your Saturday afternoon to do that. All right. Well, we're going to open it up here for the open panel. Now, the way this is going to work is you can ask anybody any question you want. So it's kind of like your opportunity to ask the guru. So if you have a question, just kind of put your hand up real quick, and I'm going to come around the room, and Jared's going to come around the room here. Okay, here we go. Coach JC, you want to talk about how it's been big for you?
You do?
As far as mastermind group, are you meaning just like people within our own company, or are you talking people outside of the company?
Just with the same beliefs and kind of goals in life that you feel like you should meet with like once a week or what have you to really increase what you're going on in life.
Yeah, I would. One of the things that I think that in my business, I have a partner in my business, which I know anything you read, anything you hear, people discourage partnerships. It works fantastic for me because it's somebody else that's on the same page that I am. We have the same goal. We have the same future outlook for our company. So that, and of course, we meet every single day and talk about, the different things that we're hoping to accomplish that day, that week, that month, this year. So that's something that I think is like a continuous thing for me every day because of having a partner in my business. I know that's different with people if you don't have a partner, and you're meeting with other people. I guess that would pertain.
Lori, could you maybe talk just real quick? Because I wanted to have you share your opinion on this. I remember we used to go to these wedding association meetings, and there would be people that would talk about how bad the economy was, and this is when the economy was good. How do you deal with negative? You know what I mean? I know you surround yourself with positive people, but how do you deal with the negative influence?
I don't have time for the negative thoughts. I mean, I just don't have the time to listen to them or to think about them or to concentrate on them. I think of your mind as like a search engine in a computer. And if that's what I'm thinking all day is how bad things are, then that's what my mind is going to be looking for, is all of the things to back that up. And if I think all day of, okay, I want to be able to do this by next week, then that's all my mind can think about. I can't get that out of my mind of how can I do it, and eventually something will come along. I mean, we have a lot of sessions at work, even with the employees, where we have a conference room, and we meet every day at 10 o'clock and involve all the employees in it, and just to bounce ideas off of one another of different things. And I think that's extremely helpful, especially with your employees, because a lot of times they'll have ideas or a different way to look at something that you weren't even thinking about. But there's no time to think about the negative stuff. If that's where you spend all your time, that's the only direction you're going to go.
Luke, did that satisfy you? You want to hear anybody else's perspective on that? Was that helpful?
Well, basically, my mastermind's a little different. Just imagine, picture if, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, six right now, could be in a room together for a day. That's what my mastermind is. We have a group of individuals that are successful in what they do, all different occupations, and some of them are famous names you would know. Some of them are, just multimillionaires, and some of them are, cleaning carpets, have a carpet cleaning business. Some of them are professional speakers. But basically what we do is we get together out in Las Vegas. All right, there's about 15 individuals. We do that twice a year. All right, and then we break that mastermind up into smaller masterminds. All right, where we meet another twice a year, and then we have monthly phone calls. You heard it before, iron sharpens iron. I would not be where I am right now without the team that we've built, but also the team that I surround myself with. So I think a mastermind is crucial to your success. There's a lot of smart people in this room, but just picture and find people right now that you think you can. Why not build your own mastermind right here in Tulsa? You can go to a restaurant, pick 5 people that you think would be successful within a mastermind. So I think it's crucial.
I was just going to encourage you, if you're looking for that group, don't be scared that, I don't have anything to contribute in that group. I mean, I think every one of us at one point in time, we were scared to start something or try something new. And it's amazing how a lot of people in this room deal with the same thing. And you may be the leader for that group that starts that group up, and somebody else wanted to start it and they didn't know. So I just encourage you, if that's something you're interested in, find people that you think are smarter than you and ask them. And chances are they're probably thinking, well, he's smarter than me. And they'll join in.
I would agree. I think it's the most important thing you can do to hear an outside voice of someone who's been through something similar as what your goals are. And I used to meet on a quarterly basis with mayors from around the country, mayors who'd been mayors for 40 years, 10 years, 5 years, big cities, small cities, and former mayors of Tulsa. And they really served kind of as my mastermind group to bounce ideas off of, to let me know where I was going down the bridge that was out, and when I could make a difference. And then also I could count on them for support. So I think it's a great concept.
There's no lonelier place in the world to be than to be an entrepreneur. And I think if you guys are in that place right now, then you've shared that experience. I know in my life on the personal side, I didn't tell my wife all of the details of the business, not because we don't have an open relationship, but because it stressed her out way more than me. And so it got us to a place where in many ways, your spouse may be that person in your life with whom you share everything, and you lean on each other for that kind of support and that type of encouragement. But as an entrepreneur, when your day is full of insanity and stress, and it's not just at work where you leave it there. You go home and she knows that our finances are tied up in the success or failure of the business. Then to share the bad experiences with her meant so much more, and she took it differently. So I found that I was protecting her from that and then was very alone. And so the best thing that I've got, I'm very lucky now. We're in downtown Tulsa, and there's another guy, he's my age, also a restaurateur. And he and I find ourselves often crashing into each other's office at a low point. And it's his name's Elliot Nelson, and he owns McNelly's and El Guapo's and the other places that you might know downtown. And so that helps a lot. I know that if life's bad, I go to Elliot's office, and I think vice versa. So I would say, be it a large group or not, the most important thing you can have as an entrepreneur, because your life is going to be stressful, is someone with whom you can share those moments and who will pick you up when you're down, and who can brainstorm solutions with you. So.
Blake, I had a question for you and Kathy, just kind of clarifying there. Because you have both ran for office in a specific for Mayor Taylor, when you're running for office and you know that like half the city just doesn't like you based on just party lines, you know what I mean? So if you switch parties, the other half wouldn't like you, whatever. So you're always, how do you emotionally deal with that? You know what I mean? Because I think when you run a business, sometimes you make a decision that's not popular with your team. And some of the entrepreneurs in here might have 5 employees and 4 of them don't like them because of the decision they made. How do you, Blake, as you're running for office, and how did you, Kathy, when you were in office, deal with the, being alone at the top? How do you deal with that?
I looked in the mirror and I said, "You're good enough, you're smart enough, and gosh darn it, people like me."
Yeah.
I've really not struggled with that at all, Clay.
Awesome.
I found that almost everyone still likes me.
Have you gone to enough doors?
That's not true at all. You're exactly right. The day you file your paperwork, you create a sea of enemies that otherwise might have been fans. It's like, oh, the guy that owns the restaurants, we like him. Oh, he's a Republican?
Ooh.
So,
Are you killing your demographic
That's
over there?
definitely a different thing. I haven't had that experience since I ran for student council president.
Do we all need to go eat at your place to support your restaurant to make up for anybody who's not shopping there now because of your ticket affiliation? Do we need to do that?
Say
Blake?
that again?
I think we all need to go eat at your place after, later tonight here to make up for any customers you might have lost by running for office, okay?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay, awesome.
Can't
all
argue
right.
with that.
Blake, I actually have a question for you. You own how many different restaurants?
I have 2 restaurants and a pub that's an arcade bar and a t-shirt shop, and then I've got a grocery store and a bagel and coffee shop in development right now. They're under construction. And then I've got a movie theater that's in development. It's not under construction. So I got 3 in the works and essentially 3 in existence. Yeah, no big deal.
Why don't you go to space too, Blake?
So my question for you is, the late laughter on that joke. My question for you is, how do you manage your week? So that's 6 total businesses plus running for office. How does your week look? I own one small business, and I think I'm going to lose my mind sometimes. I mean, you're way further along than I am. What does a week in your life look like?
I think you have 2 choices. If you're going to be busy, you're either busy with a really good game plan, which is, I think Kathy's really organized. You have a planner, a little planner book. I do not have a planner book. You either organize it and you plan it and you do it the right way, or you do the exact opposite and you just kind of get up, get in your car, and go down there and see what happens that day. And
Wow.
honestly, I had to make some changes in my life, right? When I had my first restaurant, it was in many ways a disaster. It did not do. We were in a terrible little location. I was 25, had no idea what I was doing, and I worked in that place for probably 3 years, almost 7 days a week, almost open to close. So that will kill your life. It will make. But I was so stubborn. And just refused. This is not like a good character thing in me. This is like my in-laws were investors, and there was no way I was going to go out of business. So I worked really hard, and it was really tough. As we've gotten bigger as a company, I've been able to put people in positions to run things that are theoretically better at it than me. And I long for the day when that's the case, where across the board in my company, I've got managers at every place that are better managers than I am. I've got an operations manager over the group that's better at that than I am. I've got a guy now that's my project manager, so I come up with kind of the fun, creative ideas for the new project, and then he deals with the vendors and the contractors and those types of things. So you get to a place where you're larger as a company, and you start finding people who are passionate and who are kind of built for that specific position. And then my job becomes more of a, I'm like a rubber ball down there. I really do kind of ping around from place to place, making contact with the people as needed. I don't have as much of a set plan, and my life's definitely more flexible. I would never have run for city council if it was going to turn my life back to what it used to be. So I actually have more flexibility and freedom today than I've had in the last 7 years because we've just gotten big enough to have other people do those things. It's still going to be tough. I gave my wife veto power on that decision. I just said, you know what, you get to decide this. And she said to me, I know you love this city, and I think the city needs you to do this, and I can't say no. You should definitely do it. So when she gave me her support, it became a no-brainer for me.
No, I just have a question when somebody doesn't have a question. I think that was awesome. I was looking at Arthur, and I wanted to pass it over to Arthur real quick because, I've read a little about his story, and I think you guys are going to get a lot what he's going to say. But basically, I wanted you to talk a little about how you started. Weren't you like manager? And then you started and you bought the restaurants. And then I want you to kind of tell your story just slightly. And then share a little about what separates your Chick-fil-A. Because everybody in here, you've eaten at Chick-fil-A's. If you go to this guy's Chick-fil-A's, everything's different. The food might taste the same, but the customer service is absolutely ridiculous. You don't wait in a long line through the drive-thru. Just talk a little about that and the systems you put in place and why you believe your Chick-fil-A is the best.
Sure. Well, I actually started with Chick-fil-A at Woodland Hills Mall in 1988. I was on the grand opening team. I actually got recruited while I was on break at McDonald's, of all places. I was going to ORU at the time, and I just needed a job. I wasn't thinking about Chick-fil-A as a career, and it's some circumstances happened for me, and I ended up learning about the Chick-fil-A culture and going to a grand opening in St. Louis, and I just fell in love with Chick-fil-A. I said, you know, this is what I want it to be. And for you creative people out there, I was an art major, and so anything can happen. But I went on with Chick-fil-A, and they gave me the worst store in the chain, Eastland Mall, which, you know, when they installed the library at the mall, you knew you're in trouble.
Wow.
And so, could you picture Woodland Hills with a library? That'd be pretty bad. It'd be shh, 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 shh. But but I got to work my way through Chick-fil-A to where I have the 71st and Garnett store and the Woodland Hills store now. And, you know, the thing for me is customer service, guest service that's our passion. There's so many opportunities out there, and I actually play a video a lot of times that when I'm speaking that talks about why we do what we do. And the thing is that every person has a story. Everybody in this room has something different going on with their life, whether it's good or bad. But you know what? How can we make a difference in them? And for example, last Valentine's Day, we said, let's do something fun for our guests. And so we brought in 1,000 roses to give away to every girl, every woman that came into our store. We did have too many left. But a lady came up to me and said, she started tearing up, and I'm thinking, oh man, what did we do? You know, what exactly happened here? And she said, I got a divorce this last year, and I knew I would not get a rose this year. And she goes, but I got one from you guys, and I want to thank you for that. And so that touched my heart, and that's what we're about at my Chick-fil-A, and that's why we will do whatever we can to help the guests, whether it's solving a situation before they get there. Sometimes we drop the ball. We actually, Chick-fil-A's had a big breakfast giveaway this week. We had 600 people come by for breakfast this morning, and we have one biscuit oven. And it was, while we're sitting here, I'm getting these texts going, there's people backed up, you know, it's the 25-minute wait for biscuits. I'm going, you know, even if I left here right now, there's nothing I could do. And they said, well, we got it under control. Just and that was actually customers that were texting me that. You know, so I'm just going, I said, is everybody busy? And they said, oh, yeah, you guys are doing everything you can. And they're really nice about it. And they're giving us coupons. And you know, what do? You just kind of like, well, sucks to be you. Oh, I shouldn't have said that, should I?
Sucks is okay at ManUp, right, Clay? You can say suck, right?
I don't know. I have to check with the board.
Okay.
We'll bleep it out. So, you know, and I actually knew this guy, so we were just kind of horsing around a little bit. But our intention is, what can we do for them? And so that's kind of why we take customer service to the level that we do, is how can we make a difference in their life?
I have a couple rapid-fire questions. I had some guys in the hallway that were picking my brain. I want to have a question here for Arthur, for you, and then for Jonathan Barnett here. How do you know when it's time to fire somebody, and what are the specific words you say when you lay it down? You don't know? No, I'm serious though. You got an employee that's kind of, you know, going bogey on you, and you know you like him. He's been there for 6 months, 6 years, whatever. How do you tell me the process? Because these people want to know, like, how do you do that?
Well, those aren't very fun conversations to have, obviously, but it has to happen, and you always have to look at what's best for the company. And we keep a file on every employee, and so most times if someone gets fired, it's not like a shocker. They've been on probation. They've been told about things several times, unless it's something really bad. But we just sit them down and we say, well, to be honest, at this point, most of the time I'm not having to do the firing. Somebody else is doing it, which is great.
That's the first thing to delegate.
I'm actually really bad at that, to be honest. I probably shouldn't answer this question.
Well, the reason why I'm asking this because I was talking to this guy out in the hallway, does some internet stuff, and I think what he was getting at is he has maybe 2 or 3 people working for him, and there's that awkwardness of like, so you document, right?
We
when someone does something.
document. The thing that gets you in trouble is when you don't document. You don't have a file on somebody, and you know they should be fired, but you bring them in there, and you're like, we have to let you go, and they're like, why? And in their mind, there's no matter how thin you slice it, there's always 2 sides. They have their side. But if you've been keeping documentation and they've been warned, and you go, here's this, we told you this, you didn't fix it. Here's this. You put it on them instead of it being on you, and you take it. It's not personal. It's business. So we have to put the company first. And I'm sorry, but we have to let you. You have to. It's just time to go.
It's an awkward discussion no matter how you let them go. We try to err in the side of mercy. That's a terminology we use all the time. And there's times when we have people with us and we're like, well, we should have fired them a long time ago. And you guys know, you guys got people working with you. You're like, man, I just don't want to do it, and so you don't do it. But one of the things that we do at our store is after they've worked for us for 2 weeks, we'll actually sit down with everybody and we'll kind of go over our vision and here's what our focus is. Here, really, especially if they're out front, our focus is the customer. And if they're not out front and they don't say my pleasure at the end of the transaction, or if they're not greeting the customer or welcoming them when they come in, we'll just sit down at 2 weeks and say, you know what, there's a lot of other jobs out there, and this is just not the one for you. And we're not trying to be mean, but if you look at our front line, we have the best of the best, and we have that because of our standards. And so you can either rise to the occasion or we can let you go. And to be very honest, most of the time, they just don't work out. And it's kind of the old adage of birds of a feather flock together. Those people just, they don't want to stay there. I mean, if everyone's happy and chipper and going off the walls, the people that aren't like that don't want to hang out with them.
A question for you here. As far as startup capital, we've had a bunch of people that emailed in over the week, questions for you guys about startup capital. Can we kind of start down with Coach JC and just kind of work the way down and maybe how you raised your initial capital? Because I think some people are going, I really like what you guys are doing, but I've got $17 and I'd like to start a business with that. And maybe if you could just share how you got started, where you raised that initial money.
Well, basically what I did is I went to a Robert Kawasaki. At that time, the real estate industry was booming, and I had an uncle that was in real estate. And basically, I did not want to be in real estate, but I knew it was an avenue to make some quick cash. And for me, I wanted to be in fitness. So I went and I learned over the next 8 months how I can wholesale and flip homes. And that's what I did. My first one didn't do real well on. Second one did all right on. Third one made $15,000 off of. And after my fourth one, had enough money to go and start Bootcamp Tulsa and everything else I wanted to do. I don't do real estate anymore, but it was an avenue for me to make cash at the time. So that's what I did. I'm not a big fan of borrowing too much money. I've just never been a fan. I believe when you borrow, you're always in. When you're in debt, you're kind of a slave to people.
I'll pay you back. I promise. I'll pay you back.
I don't like that position. So.
All right.
The photography studio I kind of touched on earlier, that we did a home equity loan, a small home equity loan, $25,000 when we started the studio. With the Zany Bands, it was my partner and I went together, but it was to have turned out to be as big a company as it was started with $60,000, and we never borrowed a dime. I mean, every time we would just keep reinvesting the money that we made. That was all that was ever put into it from the beginning. Because sometimes you can, if your vision's so big and then you extend yourself, you think you have to have this much money. It's a lot of pressure to make that work, or if it doesn't work, you may never recover from that. So you have to be really careful and watch that's why we worked out of our home for so long, until I was absolutely 100% sure that this is going to make this amount of money. We worked out of the home. We had office. My living room was no longer a living room. One of the bedrooms was no longer a bedroom. So we just stayed there and watched every dime. That's what you have to do at first, is because things can nickel and dime you to death.
So when I was in college, I didn't grow up with my dad. I just grew up with just my mom. But my dad's side of the family, I guess my dad's dad was pretty good at business, so he gave all his grandkids $10,000. And so I got that money when I was in college at ORU. And so I went and I started a fireworks stand business in college. And so that kind of got me started being an entrepreneur, I guess. And it was off of reading that book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, about working for yourself. And so I turned that money, I doubled it that summer, and then I saved that money. And when I moved out to Colorado, went to grad school, I had student loan money. So I used a combination of a little bit of entrepreneurship and a gift and some student loan money. I mean, carpet cleaning, I didn't need that much to get started, but I guess you just got to do what it takes sometimes, and that's the cards I was dealt with.
So you recommend the fireworks stand method?
Well, I'll tell you what, I learned so much about the fireworks stands. I mean, but I'll tell you what, when I came home, I was staying at my mom's house that summer with a U-Haul trailer full of fireworks, and I spent the whole 10 grand, or I spent $4 grand on fireworks, about $3 grand on property rental, and $3 grand building the stand so that it was gone. And my mom found out afterwards. And being a single mom raising me, 10 grand's a lot of money. She came home with all the fireworks, filled her whole 2-car garage, like pretty much floor to ceiling. And she started kicking them down the driveway, saying, if you're gonna waste your money, because she's all big on education, you can find someone else to pay to store your fireworks and all that stuff. But I will tell you this, now she owns an OxyFresh franchise, and she's booking 600 jobs a month. So
there it is.
She doesn't teach school anymore. She's an entrepreneur. So.
There we go. Mr. Blake.
Before I did the restaurant thing, I did sales. I sold credit card processing and payroll services for a company called Heartland Payment Systems, which was the primary credit card processing provider for the Oklahoma Restaurant Association. So part of what got me started, I'd grown up working in restaurants. I was one of those guys, like probably some of you, who majored in something different every semester in college. And, being an entrepreneur, most of us, I think, are driven by this thing. Like, we like doing lots of different things, not just one thing over and over again. And so I always struggled, like, well, I want to do this. Now I want to do that. So I was miserable doing sales, mostly because I was sitting across the table from people who were doing something that got to where they got to use their whole brain. And I just started getting so jealous. So I did well at the sales thing, got some stock options and what have you, and cashed out. So I started the first little store. I couldn't get investors downtown, the bigger story. I wanted the Joe Mamas like we have downtown 7 years ago. So this is when Elliot's building McNelly's. I was trying to build Joe Mamas. There was no BOK Center yet. McNelly's hadn't been successful. It was, people laughed at me. Downtown Tulsa, that's ridiculous. And so you should try the Riverwalk. That's what everyone said. Look how that went. Is the Riverwalk owner here?
I think you being candid is just refreshing. I appreciate that.
So the point is he really here? Sorry if that's the case.
It's him, purple shirt guy here. This is him.
Yeah, sorry, dude. Sorry about the Riverwalk. Anyway, downtown's killing it. Riverwalk, not so much. Sorry. So the point is, I had the money that I had. Am I missing a joke? I really am missing a joke. I took 20 grand, and I was like, okay, well, I'll prove. I was so cocky. I'll prove that I can open a restaurant out here. So I bought what was a simple Simon's Pizza that had done $13,000 in sales the entire month before I bought it. 13 grand in a month. By comparison, this year on St. Patrick's Day, Joe Mama's downtown did $22,000 in sales one night compared to what that store did in a month. And so I did it. I failed terribly. I borrowed $5 grand from my wife's parents. And then through having some success there, I was able, through some existing friends and family type network, to get enough money to do the downtown thing, which we opened in November of 2008, which was the month basically that the market crashed, which was awesome because I had a lot of investors pull out at the last second because their lives were ruined. Anyway, my new plan is to marry into the automobile rental business.
So that's a misnomer. I got the startup capital that I used to invest in 1994 because I put myself through college and law school, and I had a ton of debt when I was graduated. And when my daughter was born in '82, I said, I'm not going to make her do what I did and wrap packages at streets and work the midnight to 6 a.m. shift at the Daily Oklahoman filing glossy pictures, if anyone knows what that is. So I saved money for her college education. And in 1994, I took it all out and invested it in National Car Rental.
You set the record straight, by the way, as much as you want, Kathy. You just totally elbow that guy. All right.
Okay, mine, first of all, after I tell you this, don't everyone get online and try to buy a Chick-fil-A franchise. It's only $5,000. The biggest part of Chick-fil-A is who they choose for the different sites. Of course, I did everything against the book since I had no business classes, and I took out a loan at 21.99% interest for that $5,000 because I didn't have any credit and I didn't have any in-laws or parents that had any money. So I took a risk.
Now, real quick, we have about 5 minutes left. We have 2 questions left. I'm going to kind of fire them off here, lightning round here. We're going to come down to this gentleman. But question number 1 here, if we can kind of be quick just for the sake of time here. What, in your opinion, is the number 1 reason that businesses fail? Because most businesses fail. So I'm going to start with Arthur. Most restaurants, most businesses, what's the number 1 reason you think most businesses fail? And then we'll have this gentleman ask you a question.
The number 1 reason? Why don't we start over there?
That was his question, by the way. I'm sorry. I stole his question. There, in his face. Okay, go for it.
The number 1 reason I think most businesses fail, priorities.
Not realizing how hard work it is and failing to pay unemployment taxes because it's a huge penalty.
I think priorities is my answer as well. Most restaurants fail because the restaurant business, more than a lot of other businesses, has people who are prone to vices. And so most of the time when you see some restaurant that you thought was good go out of business, the owner of that restaurant gambles or smokes crack or...
That's a bogey.
So, yeah, priorities.
I'll chip into something here. I don't have a restaurant business, but I think from my experience being around, the neat thing about it, my position is with being a franchisor is we have the same opportunity for all of our franchisees, and we have franchisees that don't make it all the time, but we have franchisees that kill it. And so I get to see what makes them successful and what makes them not. And I would say that it's the franchisees that do the 5% right, not the 95% right, that are successful. And it sounds like you're doing the 5% of the things right. And what I mean by that is the customer service, like how the Rose thing, it's the little things that make you successful, not having, like, you can have the great location, you can have a great product, but if your customer service in the front line, the 5% is horrible, the customers might choose someplace else next time. It's like being in the homes, carpet cleaning, upselling, getting a little bit more on the ticket, leaving a magnet, getting a referral. It's the little things that you do. And to close with that, I would say you can't measure what you're not monitoring. So if you have a business and you're not monitoring, closely, I know you don't have a day planner, but you probably should get one, I think, because you should monitor. I'm just kidding with you, but seriously, if you're not monitoring everything you're doing, all your employees what they're doing, you can't measure the performance, and you might be losing lots of money when you're doing like 24 grand like he does in a day. He has a big business, and if 10% of that's missing over the course of the year, it's a lot of money. You know what I mean? So it's the little things that I think make our franchisees either make a lot of money or not make it.
Okay, I would actually probably have to say there are 2 things, and one of them is priorities, like what you said. I think a lot of people that go into business, I know when I opened, say, my photography studio, I knew there were so many businesses out there that were not willing to do maybe what I would be willing to do. If they were open 4 days a week, I was going to be open 6 days a week. So a lot of people say, well, I own my own business. I'm not going to do all that. That's why I have my own business, so I can have my freedom. Well, I do get to pick whatever 80 hours a week I want to work. So, but I knew that I was willing to do what the other person was not willing to do. So I think if you don't have that mindset, that you won't make it. And the second thing, I think, is knowing your actual bottom line, like where I'm do a product and just say, like, I buy zany bands were, say, $2.50 a package or 60 cents a package to have manufactured, and I sold them at $2.50, and people think, well, you've got this great profit in there, and then the store sold them at $5. But you have to consider every little thing. From the insurance, your employees, your building, everything that goes into that cost. So when you're reselling products, if you're manufacturing something, then you're looking to maybe resell. You've got to take every bit of that into account, or before you know it, you bought it for 60 cents, and you think, well, I can sell it for 90 cents and make a great profit. Well, by the end, it really cost you $1. So you're actually losing money, unless you want to be a nonprofit business. That's not really the way to go. So bottom line, just find out every bit of the cost before you go out and start selling something.
Know your numbers. That's good. For me, there's no doubt it's having the right game plan, the right system. Because I see a lot of business owners out there, and they're working hard, and they're doing, like we talked about, they're doing all this stuff, but they get burnt out. They're wasting time. They're wasting money. It's all about having the right system and a right game plan, because how do you know what numbers to execute? How do you know what sales and the numbers are coming in? How do you make 24? It's a system. It's having the right game plan, and that's why I'm such a huge fan of coaching, because I know a lot of people, if they just got the right coaching, it could transform their mindset, but also give them the right game plan.
Great. We've got time for one more question here. This gentleman right here has got one question. Go ahead, sir.
All right, you talked about priorities, and my question has to do when you're starting out. It seems like I want my business to get started. I want to get it going fast, and it's consuming a lot of my time, or majority of my time. But I don't want my family to suffer. And so it's hard to balance the time between business and family. I just want to, any of you guys ever had that problem or overcome?
I wanted to say one thing that I know, before for you guys, Clifton Taulbert, I met with him, I was thinking 2007, when I got to shake Chris Taylor's hand there for the Entrepreneur of the Year Award there. My wife seriously was contemplating not hanging around with me anymore. And so I went and talked to Cliff. He's a great family. He's a multi-millionaire business. And I said, how are you able to balance? And he just said, wake up at 5, wake up at 4, wake up at 3, wake up at 2, don't go to sleep, but don't leave your kids. You know, he's like, from 5 to 8, those little humans are counting on you. But then you can get up as early as you want, and they won't miss you. So that's one thing Cliff told me, and for me, had a huge impact. So now, if I have a long day planned, I just start like at 3 in the morning and just do it that way, because my kids don't miss me at 3 in the morning. So that's, I guess, Cliff's tip for me. I just want to share that with you guys, because it helped me tremendously in that area. But open for you guys.
Anybody want to chime in on that?
I've got 2 boys, Skylar and Scout, 5 and 2, and my wife is Julie. There's no reason I should be married still, except that I married a saint of a woman, because I was really gone. For those years in my mid to late 20s, I was working so much that what happens, if we're being personal, is that she's so happy to see me when I'm home that she doesn't express during that time her frustration, because she knows she's only got a certain amount of time. And so she was feeling this pressure to make that time be happy time. And so over time, she knew I was already stressed out and exhausted and tired and frustrated. She didn't want me to come home and then have to deal with her saying, I'm frustrated that you're not home more, when she knew I couldn't do anything about it. And so it created this thing in our life where she, pretended like she was happy with me for the, hour that she saw me in the course of a day, at best. And over time, it just got to where we were, I'm being really personal, where we lived in the same house, and had kind of a thing. And I'll tell you this, whatever it is you think is so important about your entrepreneurial endeavors, that you would sacrifice what's best for your relationship with the people inside that house, I will tell you it's not. And I in many ways, would have been better off waking up, punching in, and working for the man for that amount of time, and being much more miserable, not pursuing my dreams, but coming home and having a relationship with my wife that was what she deserved. And so it's really hard to let the person in your life who's a visionary and an entrepreneur and whatever do the thing that they want to do, because that's who they are and who they were made to be, and you love them and you want to see them happy and have that thing work. So, well, what I've done now is I just started saying I don't care if it fails. So I just got to the place with my businesses where I don't care if it fails, and that may be irresponsible and it may be counter to your advice from earlier in the day. I don't know. But if Joe Mama's goes under tomorrow, that would suck. But I've got things that are much more important than that to me. So I'm going to fight for those things first. And I come home. I put my kids to bed regardless. I will always be home. Things just changed over time, and I had to learn to fight for the more important things, which were my family. I'll let the businesses die.
Blake, how long, when you first started out, just approximately, how many hours a week were you putting in? I know you said you were putting in a lot, but just an approximate, how many hours a week were you putting in?
I worked probably 14-hour days, 7 days a week.
Wow. And now?
Most of the time I do not work, but a couple of hours on the weekends. Though, because kids are in school now. That's home time. I'm usually home by 7:30 at night at the latest, so I have that time to play with the kids and hang out and put them to bed. I work all night. I mean, the hardest thing for me is in the daytime am at so many people's beck and call that I don't get like sit down and email time or whatever until late. So I don't sleep much, and I work till 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever. And that's when I get that stuff done so that I can be present and energetic in the evening. It's one thing to be home. It's another thing to be home with the energy and the wherewithal to engage in a conversation and wrestle on the floor and that kind of stuff. So, I've let my health go bad in the middle of this, and I take on too much, and I've had to just in the past few months. So I had to go to the doctor because I was having health problems, and she's like, so maybe it's stress. What do you do? And I'm like, well, I own some businesses. And, well, have you had any new stresses? And I'm like, well, I'm running for city council. And she's like, oh, you're going to have to quit lots of things. And so I've had to start purging even more things out of my life. Because, if you're like me and if you're in this room, you probably are in many ways. If you can, then you want to say yes. It's like, well, I can do that. Or you look at a mess over at City Hall and you say, man, they could use some help from me. Maybe I should just go run for city council or mayor. Right. She tried to talk me out of it.
Would the rest of the panelists up there, did most of your career start? I know, Lori, you talked about this a little bit in your session about how the kids were the most important thing, but when they were sleeping, all you did was work. You were putting in 40 to 45 hours, and mainly when your kids were sleeping?
When my kids were little, I remember days, because I was a stay-at-home mom, of just longing to be out there in the career world working. But, it was a sacrifice. I feel like that I stayed there and I took care of the kids. When they got into where they were in school, I worked part-time, but I picked them up from school every day and went home. We had the, snacks after school, everything that, this all-American family would have. I remember one time my son got sick at school and had a migraine headache and threw up at school and everything. And when I picked him up that day, he's like, where were you at today? He said, I've tried all day to call you. I was so sick. And I said, well, son, I was at work. Why didn't you call me? He said, you work? I was like, yes. He said, well, when? I said, the hours you're in school. So, I made sure that my kids did not miss out. I was still always there. So when they finally got to the age that I felt like it was okay for me to open my own business, I involved my kids very much in my work. Even like Clay saying earlier when they made birdhouses, that's because that's what we were doing. And as a stay-at-home mom, that was a thing I did, and I did craft shows, but I involved my kids to where, and if you are trying to work and you do feel guilty of some of the hours, if there's little parts of it that your kids can do that can help out, that you can pay them for, that you're there with them, and you won't realize that until maybe later, where my kids are now 30 and 27 and 26, of how much value there was in that because of what they learned from being there with me. And even like my kids, I would say now, they all work with me now, which is wonderful. So I get to see them every day. But of what they learned, I would say they will make the best employees for anybody out there, because I was harder on them than I probably would have been on any other employee. It was always, if you got time to lean, you got time to clean. Whatever it was that needed to be done, I said nobody will ever want you working for them if they have to keep coming up to you and telling you, do you need something else to do? Do you need to find something else to do? You have to be the one going to your boss saying, I'm finished with that. What would you like for me to do? So there was a lot of great lessons in that. My daughter used to come with me down to the studio, and I can remember her as younger being, she would curl up under the desk and go to sleep. But what I wasn't realizing is she was listening to all of the phone calls when I would talk to customers. And now she's will graduate in December with her marketing degree, and she can sell anything. So she picked all that up just from listening. So you can involve your kids. Just because they're younger doesn't mean that if you want them maybe to someday grow up and take over whatever business you're going to start or be involved in it, you can give a lot to them by involving them in it.
As we're wrapping up here, JC, Jonathan, Arthur, Kathy, anybody want to chime in on that? Arthur, you especially, because I know you have 6 kids.
I do have 6 kids. Of course, Clay has 5, so you can't talk. That's true. But it is, when I first started with Chick-fil-A, it was, when I was running Eastland Mall, there was times when it was me and one other employee, and if it snowed, it was me. And that's it. And this is before computers. I'd be doing everything by hand and in triplicate, and I'd be sitting there at the front counter running everything. And my wife keeps saying, thank God you started your business before we got married. But nowadays, it is one that when I walk in the door, my 2 little girls come running up to me, and I can't get them off me. It's like, and I don't want to. So I don't even make it down the front hallway, and I have to drop my stuff, and I'm done. And once they go to bed, that's when, once everybody's settled down in bed and light, things are quiet, my wife starts watching the reality shows. Yeah. So at that point, I'll sit down and say, okay, where are we at and everything? What do I got to finish up? And there's times I'll work till 2 in the morning to get it done. Starting your own business, if there's an hour in a day, you got to take it. But you can't neglect, those important things, and the family is the important things.
Well, I'm single, so I don't know what these guys are talking about. I play Xbox when I get home from work, so.
ManUp Entrepreneurship Bootcamps.